Nerd morning, everyone. My name is Jeremy. This is Joseph.
Hey, everybody.
And we are talking Wheel of Time. So we did a read through. It was amazing, super fun. And now we're doing a watch through, and it's been a really interesting experience.
Oh, it's different, but so far in a good ways. So
Yeah,
I don't have a lot of complaints, really.
I've got a lot of
Uh,
complaints, but they're nitpicky. And they're like, and I don't know. So like, this is my big thing is I could go and tear this series apart and like gripe and gripe
oh,
and gripe,
sure.
but that's
Right.
no fun to be angry at something. And also if we hate on this, then they're gonna like not produce anymore, and I want them to get better and better as we go along.
There you go.
And
There
I
you
would
go.
love for season one for them to go, okay, maybe we flew a little far away from this series, and let's course
Right.
correct a little bit more, and we'll have a
Yeah.
stronger fidelity to the books in season two. Also, I want them to greenlight more episodes so we can spend a little more time,
Yeah.
because things like this episode, this was a beautiful episode. It was
Right?
not in the book at all. Nothing
No.
really in the book
None of it.
paralleled this
No.
really at all.
No.
The
No.
closest was the experience that we have with Perrin and Egwene with the white
Right.
cloaks.
And you had
And
asked about that last week. You're like,
right,
where is this? How
yeah,
is that
yeah.
gonna work? So we got that,
We got it,
right?
but it was
Yep.
extremely different
So
than
different.
what we had in the book. Um,
Yeah.
and again, like this is a different spinning of the wheel. This is an
Right.
adaptation, and this is very heavily adaptation.
Oh
But
yeah.
I have talked with people who were like, and people in the comments on the channel even who were like, I'm loving this series. I want to read the books. And I'm like, yes, please,
Yeah.
because this book series has been done. It's been done for years.
Right. Yeah.
Relatively speaking, it was dead. I mean, there were new people who were discovering and reading it because it is a
Sure.
classic, but
Yeah.
unless you were able to do something with the franchise, it wouldn't go anywhere.
Right.
There's no new lifeblood, right?
Right. It's done. Yeah. 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 Uh-huh.
Um, but oh my gosh, this book series is one of my absolute favorites.
Oh, it's so much
Um,
fun.
it
Yeah.
is it is incredible, and it opened my eyes to what fantasy can be beyond the the hero on a journey or the
Or the
person riding
Dragon
a dragon. Yeah,
Slayer.
exactly,
Yeah.
that kind
Right.
of stuff.
Right.
And it just like world building, like we
Yes.
can have extremely rich complex worlds and discover cultures and belief systems and different ways of life and all of that, and I'm really extremely pleased with all of those different types of things that they've been doing
Yeah.
in the show. And those types of things have felt very good and rich and true. So
Yep. Agreed.
as
Yep.
we've kind of mentioned, we are going to be talking episode 5, Blood Calls Blood. And this, I don't know, this is an interesting one. Like I said, 98% of this is not in the book at all.
Right. There's we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this. So they pick little
Yeah,
moments that are significant and
yeah,
wove them in
yeah,
differently. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, okay, I'm going to start here. This is another part that's close to the book, but different. Logain.
Yeah.
Procession through Tarvalin, and we get the two boys, Rand and Matt, to see him there.
Uh,
What's your take? What are your thoughts?
I again a different turning of the wheel. They mention Camelin. The Oberlin apparently is in Camelin at
Right?
this moment,
Which is weird, but
but they
okay.
don't go to Camelin.
Right?
But they do the procession in Tarvalin,
Which
and
makes
they
sense.
pronounce Tarvalin Tarvalin.
Tarvalon.
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 Tarvalon is how they pronounce it. And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh,
Yeah, right. Honestly,
but that's okay. But,
pronunciation has been very different than what I've
sure.
grown to love. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Anyway,
I'm saying Tarvalin because that's how my
yeah.
OG brain is, and I just can't
Uh-huh.
reprogram it quite yet. So
And that's fine, and it's all good. But yeah, uh throwing rotten vegetables and stuff at them, totally stuff that historically we know happened in our world. It makes sense it happened in their world like that for a condemned criminal.
yeah,
uh
but it's very
for the
interesting that they were not necessarily being super careful about the Aes Sedai.
right when they mentioned that someone hit
Uh, Leandrin.
Leandrin with a radish, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
ah, because I could just see her being like, if I knew who did that,
Right.
I would melt their face off. Just like
Right.
that was
I
so
would.
funny.
Yeah, it was super fun, but I'm like the people of Tarvalin are very,
Right,
very careful and respectful to Aes Sedai. Like in the books,
right,
I don't think that would happen. You
right.
would
I don't
choose
think they'd be
not.
throwing stuff.
Uh-uh.
Yeah,
And even if you were
yeah.
throwing stuff, you would be like, heck no, am I daring to throw anything towards the Aes Sedai?
Right. Yeah.
Like I'll throw it at Logain, but I'm going to be very careful because if I messed up, I feel like I'm going to be in huge trouble,
Yeah.
and like
Uh,
that's
for
interesting. And there's
years, you'd be like, where are they gonna come and get
right,
me?
right. You're going to get your comeuppance because
Yeah.
Aes Sedai are petty. I'm going to say it. Aes Sedai are petty, and they would
And like,
not stand for that. They
no,
would get their vengeance.
they have old grudges. Yes.
Yes. Um, okay, so I'm gonna say that Logain has the ability to see Toviran in this spinning.
It would only
Um,
make sense otherwise. How would he visually recognize that Rand or Matt, as the way they're
uh-huh,
portraying it,
uh-huh.
are worth laughing at in the form of, oh my goodness, you
You
don't
suckers. Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's totally how I read that scene.
yeah. It looked like it was kind of like in Matt's head. They
Some
were
of
trying
it,
to showcase that, and
yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know, but one of the most interesting things was in the book when Logain's like, oh yeah, I remember seeing Rand
Right.
in Camelin
Uh-huh.
on the wall, like that's so interesting there. They kind of tried to mirror that to some degree.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But like I always envisioned this as like Rand is like seeing a little dude off in the distance, right? You
Right.
can hardly
It
picture this.
the way
And
it, in the book, yeah, it seems like it's a long way,
yeah,
but
but even with that distance, with this throngs of people, Logain notices Rand, and that's a big thing. Rand and Matt are not together.
right. In the
Matt
book, no.
Matt's like, forget this, I'm going to bed, I don't care about no dragon. Like that's him because of that. But having him there and having him have a episode right there really
It
helps
fits.
visually
Yeah.
help tell the story, where we don't get the same type of internal dialogues and other types of things that the books can help see, and we don't get to spend as much time traveling to see him troubled and
Right.
troubled and troubled. So
Right.
um we are seeing these boys at a inn of an undescript
Right.
place.
Friend of uh, uh oh, come on, Gleeman.
Yeah,
Friend of Tom, a
yeah,
friend of Tom. uh
yeah,
that's all we get.
yeah.
So
I'm
okay.
like, are they saving that so we can have the Queen's blessing in Camelin?
Yeah,
That way they're
maybe.
splitting up two different inns to kind of solve that problem.
Yeah.
Because that's significant when we go down the road.
Yeah, because
I
if
mean,
they decide, maybe they don't know if they're going to use Gil or not,
Yeah,
and so this way they kind of leave it open.
yeah, yeah.
But
I'm
yeah,
hoping Master Gil and the Queen's Blessing is elsewhere, but they're gonna have to, like, I don't want that in Camelin because it's so important.
yeah.
But how are they gonna do it now? I don't know. Are they?
Tom has lots of friends.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, and
yeah,
that's fine. But like, the history when they return with loyal and those types of things helps build the foundations that we need when we return to and interact with him in the future. And
right.
we're just not going to have that, or we're
No.
going to have that, but it's going to be in Tarvalin,
And
which
they tweak it.
shifts Master Gil's whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Anyway, okay. But
Um,
in the tavern, loyal.
Yeah. Okay. Visually, I'm really loving what they're doing costume and design wise. I do
Mhm.
wish that they would have given him another 4 feet.
Yeah, and maybe just a little bit more on the shoulders.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
because
something.
he looks
But
he looks pretty good though.
yeah,
I
I
really wish that he
I
was
can
another 4 feet
totally,
tall, but you
but
know,
I totally appreciate how well they did portray Loyal and his performance. Just totally calm, totally. Oh yeah, here's this thing. Here's this books. I was chased in the streets. Huh? How funny. Yeah,
yeah, everything's rolling off
it was
him.
done
Yeah,
good enough. I
yeah,
look forward to see more from him.
yeah,
So yeah,
totally.
yep,
Um, that dynamic is, I think, really important and valuable. I love Loyal. Loyal is an
yes,
incredible character, and I think we had a decent introduction.
yep.
I'm pleased overall. The only
Oh
thing
yeah,
is I'd love him on stilts, but I know stilts can be difficult or something.
sure.
Um, um, okay. Um,
the
let's. Where do you want to go?
I was thinking of the warders
Okay,
and
yeah, this is the big chunk of the story for this
mhm,
episode. And this is one, like, I have a video on my YouTube channel that explains the water bonds. So we'll talk about water bonds here right now, of
uh,
course, too. But you want more details, go a little bit more in depth than what we're going to do here. Check out that. Um, but yeah, the water bond is super significant. We get to see the turmoil of someone losing their Aes Sedai,
mhm.
and that's really interesting. And kind of this brotherhood that the warders have, which honestly wasn't necessarily explored in the book.
Yeah,
It's
it's
talked
hinted
about. Oh
to.
yeah, yeah.
It's but to see it, to see their camaraderie,
Mhm.
that was nice.
That was really
Really,
nice. This
it
was
really
an
was.
addition that I feel like enriched the world and
Hmm.
added value to the story, rather than going a different direction in the story. And that's a lot of the different things that they've done, which are the ones that I'm kind of like I guess I have to like work with it. I have to endure that to enjoy the story. Like this one, I'm just like, yes, I love this. You are giving me something new and more and adding value to this world. And
Yes.
that was really interestingly explored with the warder Stepan, who we don't really have in the books.
At least I don't
Um,
remember.
yeah, like
Yeah.
there are a lot of names, and
Uh-huh.
could have been a warder that we heard of named Stepan, but I don't recall it.
But
Um,
yeah,
but yeah,
certainly not in this situation.
no, no, this
Right.
this character has been created for the show.
Mhm. Right.
Whether it was a name drop that they're utilizing or something different, like this is a new character,
Yep.
and Stepan's really his job is to explain the risks involved
Yeah.
with the water bond.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yep. The at the beginning during the morning portion and returning the ring to their smelting.
Yeah.
Um,
Which was
that was
interesting.
different,
Yeah.
new. I
Yeah.
don't believe anything like that is ever even hinted at in the books.
No.
Uh, but kind of an interesting idea, and something I think certainly in another turning of the wheel, I could see the warders taking on that type of responsibility.
Yeah.
It would serve to give them a little bit of purpose,
Uh-huh.
rather than, maybe that's why he didn't just go berserker.
It's because
Like
he
we were
felt like he had
saying,
that duty. Yeah.
he had one more duty to perform at least.
Yeah.
uh, and that could be a really good description of why didn't he go berserk, like we were talking about last
Yeah.
week.
He definitely had the helplessness, the uselessness, the uh like kind of the fading away of
Uh-huh.
oneself that you kind of see and is described through other people who had survived and they were trying to keep alive. They were
Yeah.
like, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was really, really fascinating. I think as well as we kind of saw this like watch that after that was done, and there we have Lan who goes in there and it's like, I'm going to stay the night with you. We're going to drink. We're going to talk,
Right.
and
We're,
um, I'm going to not leave you alone because I know this is a dangerous time for you.
right.
And that was really interesting and powerful.
Mhm.
Um,
It showed kind of that bond. You could tell they weren't necessarily friends, but
mhm.
they were brothers in arms, brothers in
Yeah,
purpose,
yeah,
and that respect that they had. And if it hadn't been Lan, it would have been one of the others,
yeah,
right? Uh, and he obviously kind of knows something like this is coming because he prepares for it.
yep, yep. And
Absolutely.
Lan is drugged, and he uh, ends his life, and
Yep.
that is a tremendously tragic thing, and it really is also very on par with the books. Like, I think that would have been the case for a lot of warders in that particular situation, which is
It really sounds
like
like it. Yep.
really traumatic, really heartbreaking, and a very dangerous side effect to the closeness of this bond. I mean, it's this
Right.
bond, you kind of have like a little spot in your mind of that other person,
Yeah.
and it's like having that ripped out, like you're ripping out a part of your soul, like you just
Hmm.
can't handle that, and that dramatic effect causes this type of reaction on both
Right.
warders and Aes Sedai. The Aes Sedai seem to handle it a little bit better,
Yeah.
um,
More to
but
the effect of just not really wanting another warder.
yeah, I mean, you get
But
stories of them
uh,
weeping every night for years. Like,
hmm
there's this overwhelming sadness. They have this purpose of being Aes Sedai that they keep on stumbling
right.
forward, but that seems to be a very big shock. And you have people like at the very end, no spoilers here necessarily, but at the final battle, we have a good example of a Aes Sedai who loses their warder, and they decided to go out with a bang rather than continuing on.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so, yeah, there's a really, really big stuff that they go on there, and that's
Right.
explored here very, very well.
Right. It's a good setup for what risk does Lan have? What is he currently living with?
Mm-hmm.
And other warder type scenarios that come in the books,
Mm-hmm.
as well as what they might be setting up for to include in the show.
Yeah.
We're getting a good setup of what does this really mean.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
because there are several people who ultimately become warders who are significant characters,
hmm
and they have this risk that they are going to undertake, and we get that here. So
yeah,
that's pretty powerful.
totally.
Um, so what's interesting here is kind of also kind of like where we're going to be headed, and I'm going to hit that kind of at the end and how we're going to link that.
Right.
The other big thing for me in this episode, though, is with we mentioned this at the very beginning, is the White Cloaks, Perrin
Uh
and
huh.
Egwene. Now,
Yeah.
this is one thing they do really good is they help set up foreshadowing for
Their
Egwene.
conflict.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. But with Egwene's hard steadfastness, stubbornness, never yielding self.
Yep.
And that's something honestly that wasn't fully explored until like the very tail end of the stories for me.
Yeah.
But they're setting that up now, and it's a true constant of her character. And I like that they're trying to give that foundation earlier
Uh-huh.
for her. I liked that.
As well as some of her cleverness.
Uh-huh.
She didn't just straight out attack.
Mhm.
She helped Perrin escape too,
Yeah.
which it was the better choice,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So it did cue some of her cleverness also, which is
Yeah.
great.
Also, though, we got to see her fumble through weaves,
Uh-huh.
and that's good because if all of these characters were just like being boss weave
Yeah.
people at the very beginning, like that was a big part of the story, especially for the women, is them growing into their power,
Yes.
and that's they can't do everything now. Like it was awesome to see Nynaeve with that blast of power, healing everybody, doing all those incredible things. But that also sets up like this idea of we can do anything now. We've got this covered, and we don't get to struggle through that. They are supposed to be more capable, more talented, a little bit more powerful than anyone else at their level, right? But they've also have a long way to learn and grow, and I hope that they keep that.
Right. Yeah. Not just, and now you're awesome. Ta-da!
Yeah.
Right.
The other side of this scene is Perrin and Perrin's dynamic and how that sets up things future, as you had
Right.
mentioned.
Yeah. He admitted to Egwene the accidental killing of his wife,
Right?
which in a lot of ways I'm sure was helpful to his psyche, that
Uh-huh.
admitting it,
Yeah.
but he's still holding on to the but I deserve this.
Yeah.
So I think, like you said before, that's going to be more of his internal conflict
Mhm.
with death and killing,
Yeah.
uh, and yeah,
We're gonna not necessarily have killing the White Cloaks because they didn't
right,
here. And
yeah,
anyways, they would have felt completely justified as being captures
especially
instead
being
of
already captured and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
so
So that dynamic not going to be the same, and that was his big overarching story turmoil, and that's been
right,
replaced, and we
yep,
knew that, and it's continuously being confirmed that that's the way that they're going with it.
totally.
What do you think about we actually got the name of this being Emin Valda, and this being Valda is interesting.
It is. It seems like he's also playing like 4 White Cloaks
Yeah.
from the books,
Yeah.
right? Um, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I
You
think they're
know,
doing a lot of fusing of characters.
yeah,
Like I think that
definitely.
Leandrin is taking the place of like 3 other red sisters as well. Like she's
Uh-huh.
doing some of the roles of several of these characters. And honestly, to me, that is inevitable.
That's
There's like
it, yeah.
5,000 named characters in the book series.
Yeah.
We're not going to have the 5,000 named characters in the
Ooh.
show. We're just not going to
Not
get
even
it.
Amazon could afford that. So
Yeah, we're just not, and that's okay.
yeah.
But yeah, that's Valda seems to be interesting, and I don't mega creepy. They bumped up the
Yeah.
creepy vibes here.
Oh yeah.
Um,
They're pulling in a lot of Bayar into
mhm.
his character as well. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
Um, yeah, like I don't know, it's working. It's I
Yep.
think that there's some things that I'm not 100% loving with the dynamics with the White Cloaks, but there's some things that I'm thinking they're just like nailing as well. So
Yes.
that's been really really interesting. Also, I loved the clarification there. They in episode 2, I think it was, when they had captured the yellow sister and they had the hands
The
chopped
hands.
off.
Uh-huh.
And we're like, wait a second, you don't need your hands necessarily to weave. And here they explained that you actually don't need your hands, but you've been trained this way, and so that's the way you have to do it. And that is something we learn while we're with the Aiel.
That's true to the books
Yeah.
also. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there is a heavier dependency on movement in the series and less
Yes,
mental fortitude and training.
which makes sense for the visual media.
Exactly. Yeah. I do kind of feel like that like cognitive excellence is something that is really valuable in this magic system, and it's hard to exemplify that fully in the show, which I totally recognize. But I do feel like chopping off someone's hands and things like that is kind of like these shortcut stuff that I don't necessarily love. I get it. I'm cool with it. I'm okay. But I'm like, I feel like it's a shortcut. That's how I'm gonna go with that. And shortcutting is part of the job for taking a series that should be done in 24 episodes and doing it in 8. Shortcut is a big thing.
Yeah.
And that's what actually makes this episode really interesting, because if this was a 24 episode story, having this huge side story that we have with Steppen, a side character that didn't ever exist, and spending time to understand the warders would be totally valid and worthwhile that way. Here, I'm like, we are spending so much time with a character who has no long-lasting bearing for this story as a whole.
Yeah.
And they pretty much dedicated this whole episode for this character, primarily. And I think that's a very interesting choice. And honestly, despite it being one of the best things I think of this series so far, I think would have been a writing error, just because there's so many other things that we got to be doing that we're choosing not to do to make room for this.
True. And I would agree, except for your earlier point that they're using it to explain and set up a lot of things.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Trade-offs.
Trade-offs.
That's the constant of this thing. And that's like for us who've read the book series so many times, we can go, trade-offs, right? People who are just jumping in and reading this, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful, this is so powerful, and they don't get that negative bias of being a reader that we kind of have to fight through. But yeah, that's pretty much this episode. I've got a couple of
other.
Let's go.
Still with the white cloaks, we get a little foreshadowing that the one power can be blocked.
Yes. Oh, right? Yes.
That's important with Matt later. But I think we're getting a little foreshadowing with that.
Yeah. Ooh, that was really good. Also, one thing we didn't even mention with Perrin, his eyes. What'd you think?
Oh, right. Yeah, when he gets totally worked up, emotions start to escape, and his eyes start to glow, and the wolves attack.
Okay, I loved how the wolves attacked. I loved how his eyes turned. I am disappointed that his eyes are now not permanently like that.
True.
I feel like they should, they're going to be choosing to doing this where it's going to flare on and flare off. It looks like.
Looks like it. Yeah.
But Golden Eyes needs to have golden eyes. I feel like that's significant and important to him, and is something that he constantly has to deal with, and is something about him accepting who he is that is very, very important.
It's probably the second half of his development story is coming to accept himself.
Yeah.
So,
and right now we only have him. He recognized that wolf's not going to hurt us. How do you know? Right. There was that there. That's the only thing we have linking him to the capacity to maybe potentially talk with wolves.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're ever going to have an actual speaking wolf.
Which kind of fits in
Yeah.
some ways.
I'm really torn with this idea because you have this like
Yeah,
guiding thing where like this
yeah,
wolf appears and looks this way and they look that way and then you're trying to interpret it and these, but they're intentionally trying to communicate, and that could work really well. I've seen stuff like that in other live action experiences, and it's been a good thing, right?
right.
Though I feel we'll get a less of a personal experience with characters like Hopper.
Yeah,
Um,
unless they start spending time in the wolf dream.
yeah.
That's probably how they
But
can make
like
that work. But
we needed at this episode in that experience would have been the same moment when Hopper would have been met, communicated, bonded with, died,
yep,
and then set up to be able to be his mentor in the wolf dream,
right.
none of
True.
which happened.
If we saw Hopper, it was that one angry wolf, but no death.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So that is interesting. um like, oh man, like I don't know, they again, like I I've been enjoying it. It's been good. There's so many things that I would want to make sure had happened that are they're just choosing not to. And again,
Right.
for sake of time, um, seeing a Hopper die, I could go like I could see that one being like, okay, he's this mentor in the Wolf Dream. We intermeet him later, that kind of thing. Like that can work.
True. They
That
could
can
just
work.
yeah.
I think it's not quite as rich as having that earlier experience that links those things together. But I mean, that Robert Jordan could have the time, and he was a master at setting things up. He would set something up in book 5, and you get the payoff in book 8, and so forth. Like that type of thing happened all of the time. Yeah. Any other things really for this episode? I kind of want to go through 6, 7, and 8. What we're like looking forward to.
Yeah, that's all I've
Yeah.
got for this one.
Okay, so the next one, episode 6, The Flame of Torvalin. That is the title.
Yeah, we're gonna meet the Amerlin.
Uh-huh.
Judging by
There's
the trailers, Egwene is gonna have her sit down, chew out moment that in the books we get at the beginning of book 2
yeah,
might be happening
here.
here.
Also, Leandrin and company who gentled Logain, they're going to stand trial, as it were.
Right, they're gonna have to justify it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was interesting, I think, in this episode is we get a setup of the Amerlin being at odds with Moraine. Now, this could be that they've been duping everyone really well,
Right,
which
like
would be
in the
good.
books.
But if they hold on to that and don't make these girls best buddies, I mean, there's some evidence inside of New Spring that they were even like romantic in their younger years. Like they were very, very close, and the best friends like that, like right.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then they strategically team up to not be friends but are totally friends. And so I'm hoping that somehow is built out here. That would be really, really valuable, and we'll see what happens with that. But that's episode 6.
Yeah.
Episode 7. This makes me really happy. The Dark Along the Ways.
Ah, yes.
So we are going to get the ways,
Yep.
which is wonderful. Again, we're going to get to the waves in a very different way.
Right. It'll probably be like 2 minutes of airtime, but
either that or the whole episode will be the ways, and everything that's really leading up to it and the things that are happening after it are going to be like,
True.
So those are the possibilities and how that's going to work too.
Yep.
The last episode being titled, of course, quite appropriately, The Eye of the World.
Yes, it will be very interesting to see how they compact everything that happens at the end of the book. Yes, it's at the end of the book.
Yeah.
But so much happens.
Yeah. And really big things. I mean, this
really
one is where we're going to learn about Rand. Rand has been ignored
a little
really
bit.
In this series up to this point, which really like book 1 is Rand's book, more so than
Yes.
any of the other books.
Oh,
Even
by
his
far.
named one, Dragon Reborn, which he has virtually no
Right?
screen time on that
Yeah.
one,
Uh-huh.
and so forth. There's times in the future to ignore this character, and they're trying to be able to have some mystery,
Right.
get people
That's
guessing, and I
right.
think that's
Da, da,
totally
da.
working.
Yeah.
But Rand, like, this was his time to have airtime, to get him to grow, to
Mm-hmm.
expose him, and they've went a different direction, and I get it. I think it's cool. I love the idea of everyone guessing, and like people are like, is it Matt and is it Nynaeve? Those are the two runners.
Those are the two real front runners. Right.
And Egwene seems so special. She can channel. She's got a future, but other than that, not big deal. I think that people are curious, but people thinking that with Perrin, like, he's on a different path, which is right. So good job, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think if people are clever, they go, okay, it's got to be Rand. But
Yeah, we'll
if you
see.
don't know, like, the best bet is really Nynaeve at this point, or Matt. Like, because Matt is going crazy, so that fits.
Right.
But really, the only things we know from the story itself is the Dragon Reborn is going to be crazy powerful.
Right.
Nynaeve,
Nynaeve had that moment.
yeah,
Yep.
that sold that idea there. No one else has got there. So, but I don't know, Rand this should be starting to channel a little bit. We don't have him channeling and getting sick and then starting to, like, question himself and
Yeah.
trying to discover this idea. Right now, he's totally oblivious.
Right.
There was that moment when he broke through the door fighting the Dark Friend, and he did channel, but we don't get to see him sick. There's none of those types of things that he deals with as
Right.
being a brand new channeler, and so there's nothing setting him up yet, which is interesting.
Yep. So we'll see how they lay it all out and do the Eye of the World. I hope they include the Green Man in
I
it,
do too. I do
because
too.
I could see them skipping over that,
Mhm.
but he's just such a neat character. He doesn't play a huge role, really,
No.
but probably one of the most interesting characters, and a flat, it's like the last remnant of the
Mhm.
Age of Legends is
Yeah.
the Green Man.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And
Yeah.
with that as well, like, honestly, the fight here at the Eye of the World
Hmm.
for me is the most forgettable climax of all of the books.
It's funny that you say that, because every time I listen to it, I have to back up and be like, "Oh wait, what happened?"
Right. It's so short in the book.
It is. It's
The
so
Green Man is what I remember most clearly every time. It's the most
yes.
memorable part of the battle at the Eye of the World. Like,
Yeah.
you meet the Green Man, you're just like, this is your quest, okay, I'll guide you, kind of, but not really, but
Uh-huh.
sort of, but not really.
Yeah.
And you have an interesting moment there. There's this little battle, and then there's this, like, aftermath of, oh shoot, I'm the dragon, I don't tell anybody, we're
Right.
not going to tell anybody, oh man, what happened, oh, I don't know what happened, like, there's this thing. I remember that really, really clearly. I remember the Green Man really
Yes.
clearly. The battle itself is kind of like meh.
I know. So I guess we'll see if it's the same in the visual presentation of it, or if that's like the whole episode.
Right,
So
I mean, this could be a great opportunity for the book to nail something that the
right.
book could have done better.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to give a lot of criticisms to the books because they are generally amazing. And I mean, I rate them all every time I read them on Goodreads as 5 stars out of 5. Like, all of them, every single time. I just love them, and I can't, But that is probably my biggest criticism of the whole series, book wise. Here is that scene. But this is like the Helm's Deep battle in the books in Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Underwhelming. It's just
Like
underwhelming.
yeah.
In the movie, oh my gosh, this is one of the
Right. It's
most
like the
emotional
awesomest
and most,
part.
yeah, it might be the
Uh,
best part of the entire series for me, is
yeah.
the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Probably.
And this has that moment. This is an opportunity for the series to shine and make that experience better.
Right.
We'll see what they choose to do, but this is like the ball's in your court, Amazon.
Right.
Do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, any additional thoughts before we wrap up, Joseph?
I felt watching this episode that it was like the fastest, like it was done, and I was like, "What? It's done?"
Yeah.
Like, wow! But so much happened in it, so
Mhm.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I did too. I would say this might be my favorite episode,
So
even with
far,
the criticisms that I have of
yeah,
this episode, which were a lot, right? The whole like premise of this, I had criticism of. This might be my favorite episode. They told the story that they chose to tell very, very
very,
well.
very well. Yes,
And I
totally.
think it was a cool experience. So um, thank you, Joseph, so much.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Love it.
let us know what your thoughts are. Put them in the comments. We'd love to hear your ideas and the things you've been thinking throughout the series. Um, and find out more Nerd Morning content at places like nerdmorning.com/links, which has all the different places. Nerdmorning.com itself, like there's some blog posts and other types of things there. And places at Nerd Morning on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, more like it's everywhere. Just search for that and you'll probably find us on that platform. Joseph, what's an easy place for them to find you?
Mostly Instagram at Nerd3D Printing.
Awesome. Check him out. He's doing some pretty fun 3D printing projects, and it's been pretty cool to see. So, and again, thank you so much for joining. Everyone who's been watching, thank you, and we'll catch you all next time.